back to Fat Tony Scalia, and just to give you an idea of the trouble that we are in politically in this country, Scalia is no more of a Supreme Court justice than your mama's cat. Scalia is a right-wing Christian fanatic, just like everybody running on the Republican side during this effed up season that we're involved here. You've all heard the framers of the Constitution wanted to keep everything neutral where it concerned religious neutrality. That's the reason for the First Amendment. But speaking at a Catholic high school in New Orleans recently, and I think this was posted at Huffington Post. At this high school in New Orleans, Fat Tony said, quote, "To tell you the truth, there is no place for that, religious neutrality, in our constitutional tradition." Where did that come from? That is a sitting Supreme Court justice saying that. Now, it's an astonishing a question. Where did that come from? But mostly it's astonishing because it exposes an ignorance that either ignorance or subterfuge by this thug that is supposed to be a Supreme Court justice, someone who's sitting on the Supreme Court. And as Jeff Schweitzer at Huffington Post pointed out, and Schweitzer is a scientist. His PhD is in marine biology and neurophysiology. How's that? But he writes, the right not to believe is no less protected by our Constitution than the right to believe in any particular God. Now, those of us who still have a brain understand that. We understand that. And he goes on to say, if the government cannot favor one religion over another, it cannot favor belief, religious hog snot, over rationalism. Doing that, if you do that, which is what Fat Tony does, it is in direct violation of the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. First Amendment, just to refresh, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Now, what part of establishment of religion do you suppose that Scalia doesn't understand? The wording of the First Amendment doesn't discuss the dominance of one religion over another, but the very establishment of any religion. But as Jeff points out, Scalia was not done shredding that founding document. He also said in New Orleans that, quote, there is nothing wrong with the idea of presidents and others invoking God in speeches. He said, quote, God has been good to America because Americans have honored him, end quote. Really? Really? This psycho son of a bitch can interpret his God's motivations? Wow. So, if Iranians believe that Allah has been good to Iran because Iranians have honored Allah, Hindus believe that their many gods have blessed India because they have honored their many gods. How is their belief more or less valid than Scalia about who God favors and why? Do you see where this leads to? It leads to violence, death, destruction, and eventually it's going to lead to nuclear war. If anything triggers a nuclear exchange on this planet, it's going to be this religious fanaticism. So the question then, is Scalia any different from a televangelist who says we have an earthquake or a flood because God is unhappy with gay marriage or Roe v. Wade? This is a senior, there is no such thing, I'm making it up, but a senior sitting Supreme Court justice saying this garbage. As Jeff points out in this piece, Scalia's views are precisely what our forefathers feared so terribly and worked so diligently to avoid. In addition to ignoring our Bill of Rights, Scalia has abandoned any pretense of logic to support his faith. There is no logic in religious faith, anywhere, in any of them. We know that. Let me go on. To demonstrate how terribly sick Scalia's thoughts are, he asked the ridiculous question, quote, what would you have them erect? Some conglomerate of a cross, a Star of David, and, a Muslim half moon and star? Talking about Christian religious artifacts on public property. He has no problem with it. And Scalia, you'll notice here, did not offer the obvious and eminently more reasonable alternative of erecting the crescent of Islam in place of the cross. Why not do that? Of course not. Because according to Scalia, Islam is a false religion. They're all false religions. But Scalia, who is a senior sitting Supreme Court justice, is going to tell students in New Orleans that where in the Constitution does it say that the government should express religious neutrality? Jesus Christ Almighty, the First Amendment to the Constitution states it explicitly and clearly for anybody who cares to see it. But these Christian freaks, up to and including Fat Tony Scalia, they're not going to see it. Why should they? Now, next hour, there's a tie-in here, because next hour, I want to get into this topic a little bit that has puzzled me, and maybe it's puzzled you. How can these Christian evangelicals in this country support a bastard like Trump, who's a liar, a deceiver, an adulterer, a serial marriager, serial husband, whatever the hell you call it? He cheats, he lies, he steals, he breaks every single commandment there is to break. What is it that gives Trump this enormous percent? Trump is way far beyond the self-professed evangelicals like Uncle Ben Carson or Rafael Cruz, these religious nutbags who are out there beating each other over the head with Bibles to prove that they're the most Christian so they can get the majority of votes in the Iowa caucuses coming up. What is it about Christian conservatives that they feel so at home with a bloated psychopath, narcissistic psychopath like Donald Trump?